Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 3. This is the fifth episode of the fourth season of The Simpsons. It aired on October 29th, 1992. Treehouse of Horror 3 was one of the ones I watched a lot because they would air marathons of the Treehouse of Horror things, actually on Fox back in the 90s. And this was when there were not as many as there currently are. This one has two segments I think that I always remember when I think of Treehouse of Horror, which would be the opening segment, Clown Without Pity, and then the final segment, Dial Z for Zombie. Those two, I think when I think of Treehouse of Horror, and I think of segments, those are two that always come to mind. They're always really funny. I always really like them. I think this is generally one of the stronger of all time Treehouse of Horror episodes. I do like how kind of horror-based those two certainly are. That's what I like about Treehouse Horror. The other one, King Homer, I do like the original King Kong, and I do like it to a certain degree, but it's sort of not what I'm entirely looking for in a Treehouse of Horror segment. Really what I like is the funny horror elements, the things that are totally different from the regular show, but also play within its own Simpson world, which it is basically like sort of like characters of The Simpsons playing these parts, but it's not like The Simpsons. And I get that it was a different thing for them. Apparently they were worried that people would think there's something wrong with their TVs because it was in black and white, and that was a different thing. It's like when the Muppets did things like that, like they would have the Muppets doing a movie parody and they'd kind of acknowledge their own relationships and things like that. And that's in there, but I sort of don't understand like the point of it, but I know like Matt Groening really likes it. I know certain people really like it. It's fine. It's not awful or anything, but it's sort of like King Kong's not a horror movie, guys. And I know that's like a thing that they would end up doing throughout the rest of Treehouse of Horrors. They're like, well, I don't know, a movie parody. And I'm like, I mean, people do dress up as things for Halloween, but like this is Treehouse of Horror, not like Treehouse of random ass references of things. But to talk about what I do like, and even the wraparound segment, which is The Simpsons having a Halloween party and finding Halloween games to play with the kids, and Bart and Lisa having all their friends over and Grandpa over, and they tell scary stories. This is similar to the first Treehouse of Horror wraparound segment where it's the Bart and Lisa telling scary stories in the treehouse. Second one obviously is more of their nightmares. It's sort of like when they do weirder segments. I mean, I like the Alfred Hitchcock Presents thing rather than the Bride of Frankenstein thing. It has like literally nothing to do with the rest of it, but it's a cool one. I like that segment. And I like the wraparound segments because I was a kid at Halloween watching this. So I was like, oh, this is definitely my reality right now. So I often like that. And it kind of like brought it down to earth a little bit in a weird way. It would let you get scared and then come back down and get scared and so or not get scared by King Homer, I guess. Clown Without Pity is sort of based on the Devil Doll, or is mostly based on the Devil Doll Twilight Zone episode. The long tradition of these being very influenced by Twilight Zone episodes, which I think is really cool. I like that a lot, actually. That's how I first heard a lot of these stories. I think most kids in my generation did. The Krusty the Clown thing with that is cool. The resolution to it where they just like click him off to good, it's a little weak, to be honest, but I like the funniness of it and how they're constantly making jokes. Apparently this episode, when it first screened, the writers didn't like it and they actually put in something like 100 more lines they added in because they thought the episode wouldn't work. Simpsons episodes, you'd be surprised, like even though this is aired in 1992, there's so many jokes in it. It feels like a modern comedy. What is funny about that, I guess, is that in most modern comedies, I feel like they're throwing out so many jokes and not all of them are landing. And with The Simpsons, they're throwing out a ton of jokes and everyone is landing. It's pretty crazy how well written this show was. When they had the Homer, it was like pushed in the dog water and he's like, Marge, the doll's trying to kill me and the toaster's making fun of me, was funny. They have a lot of good jokes in that. I like how that one plays more like an average Simpsons episode for the most part, which I think that and Dial Z for Zombie both do fairly well, actually. It does feel a little quick and short almost. It like went by very quickly, but I've seen it like so many times. But I like how it's mainly a Homer foul kind of episode, even though like Bart is sort of involved a little bit, I guess. It's more about Homer versus this doll. And then it kind of is dark in that, you know, when he becomes good, Homer just like tortures the doll because he was tortured by him. Instead of going like, all right, we're good now, Homer has to like make him be his slave, which is one of those like kind of like dark horror things where like you think just the villain is evil, but you are actually evil yourself. But they play it off in more of a funny way. But you know, him making Krusty doll give him sponge baths and like get him beer and being a servant is like kind of evil itself. I think the big one from this episode is Dial Z for Zombies. is really great. It's really funny. It has some of the best lines. It has a lot of violence. A ton of characters actually turned into zombies, which I think is really cool. And I really like this part. I think even as a kid, when this part would come on, I'd be super excited. And I know from my Simpsons episode guide, which I had back in the day, there's like this nice, look at this nice little page thing here. It's basically all the information on the Wikipedia just laid out differently. It's a little hard to read. Oh, it reminds me of the Dick Cavett-born joke, which I thought was funny, and shows that the Simpsons writers are nerds. But it mentions in there that one of the writer's favorite lines is where Homer kills Ned Flanders, and he goes, "Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders." And he's like, "He was a zombie?" I used to love that line. It's still a great line. I like when they go through, like, we have to go to the library. It goes, "To the book depository." It's just like a fun zombie tale. Even the cutaways, which are so random, like, which it makes sense reading that this had a lot of rewrites and weird cutaways, because when you have Mayor Quimby saying, like, "Now that the zombies are gone, we just have rotting corpses in our streets," and they're like, "Yay!" And like, that's like a funny joke. It, like, writing wise, you really shouldn't be doing something like that. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's funny and it works. And the Simpsons were always really good at getting away with things like that. And it's one of my favorite Treehouse of Horror segments because it's violent. It's definitely a horror story. It can be a little scary if you're a kid. There's Bart and Lisa doing something wacky. Everyone really gets a moment for the most part, I think. No, Marge and Maggie don't, but I guess Bart, Lisa, and Homer get big moments in this and have funny things in it. It has to do with zombies. It can be a little Night of the Living Dead, but it's also like sort of its own thing. It gets to reference things on the show. It gives all the different characters like fun things to do. I think they did a really great job with Jealousy for Zombie. That's like probably one of the best Treehouse of Horror segments. Treehouse of Horror 3, I think, kind of hints at what's going to become in the next couple and the future of it, because it's like they're doing a strict movie parody and not one that's maybe like King Homer with King Kong. It's not something that's necessarily like culturally relevant or anything, and I don't think that's something that they would do before, but it feels like kind of each of these are more of a peek at what would become of Treehouse of Horror as I'm going through them every Halloween season, or every Halloween. This is Halloween, happy Halloween. I kind of notice as it's building with the Treehouse of Horror how they're understanding how to do it, and how they have multiple Halloween episodes, how to build onto them, what to do with them, what to do with the Simpsons reality, how to twist that, how to have wraparound segments. It feels like they're about to get crazier and crazier, and I think they definitely understood the importance of it, because it felt like this episode, like, they demanded it to be really good. Maybe they knew that they were going to re-air these every Halloween forever or something. Treehouse of Horror is like the Simpsons' main huge special, basically. I don't know if it held as much importance then as it does now to everybody, but this is definitely a really fun one. I would say even King Homer is just kind of like a saggy middle, I guess. It's still fun. It's still got a lot of some funny jokes in it. It's just like the other ones, it felt like every gag was landing, every gag was working, and then when you get to King Homer, like, it's fine, you know, they're still funny, it's still season 4 Simpsons to a degree, but it just doesn't represent as much, I feel. It isn't as good as the other two segments, which I think are absolutely phenomenal, and probably the best of what Treehouse of Horror has to offer, because it's able to have a lot of fun with it. I also didn't realize when I was watching Jealousy for Zombies, I thought the Fish Police Capital Critters family dog joke was part of the openings. I didn't realize it's part of that segment. And I think I even told Saber Sparks that when he used it in his review of Fish Police, because I put that in my notes for him. So it's in there. It's it is technically a gravestone gag, but it is not part of the overall gravestone gags, which I thought was interesting. I was like, oh, didn't know that. But it makes sense because they're in a pet cemetery, and I guess that's a joke on how all of those were more animal based, unlike the Simpsons themselves. I'm surprised they didn't do what Seth MacFarlane did and just, you know, have a family sitcom. Treehouse of Horror 3, I think, is one of the classic Treehouse of Horrors. I put it closer to the topper tier. I don't think it is the perfect Treehouse of Horror episode or anything like that, but I think it shows like the fun you can really have with like telling fun ghost stories, you know, telling fun horror stories, having fun scary stories for like kind of the whole family that can still be violent and still be funny and still like make a lot of dumb crazy references. And it's sort of like everything I love about this era of The Simpsons to a certain regard, you know, even though I guess I should like King Homer because I like black and white movies and I do like King Kong and everything, I just didn't think it fit as well with the rest of them, but I still find it to be a really enjoyable special, and it's still like something that I can't wait to watch year in and year out when I end up watching usually the first 5 or 6 Treehouse of Horror specials. This is one I gladly put in the collection of like must-watch Treehouse of Horrors, and I think especially Dial Z for Zombies is just one of like maybe my favorite zombie comedies, bar none. Not just Simpson episodes, but zombie comedies ever. And same with the Clown Without Pity, I would put as probably one of my favorite Devil Doll horror stories if I was going to list them. Obviously, I think the Twilight Zone episode I would put above this, but I still think it's really phenomenal and really funny. And he's able to have a lot of fun with like this cartoony idea and just like having so many gag within gag while playing it within the horror thing, especially in that one, I think really works well. This was a phenomenal classic Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, and if you're looking for a fun thing to watch this Halloween, this is definitely one of the topper tier Treehouse of Horrors of all time because of its wit, because of its fun, and because season 4 of The Simpsons is pretty undeniable, much like Treehouse of Horror 3, and I can't wait to review the next one next year. But until then, happy Halloween, and comment below in the comments what you think of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 3, and subscribe if you would like to. Thank you.